Fangorn, the Tree Shepherd. It might seem strange that I'm choosing this one as the first guy to look at, but he seems the most interesting to me, actually. He is an interesting guy. He is the oldest of all the Ents of Lord of the Rings, and he is the one to lead them into battle later, even though they really shouldn't. And I think that is really telling of a character. And usually we aren't really able to relate to trees, but here we kind of are in the fact that he does something that we don't expect. So the card itself says, Treefolk you control have vigilance, and with that, Fangorn is the actual first leader of the Ents, of the Treefolk in Magic the Gathering. He says then, whenever one or more Treefolk you control attack, which they can do easily because they have a lot of toughness and vigilance now, add twice that much green mana. And you don't lose that unspent green mana as steps and phases end, so you can use it to cast more creatures or sorceries, doesn't matter. He says, I am an Ent. Fangorn is my name according to some. Treebeard, others make it. And the funny thing here to me is that those two things mean the same thing. I think that's funny because he doesn't understand the concept of a meaning, so he feels like he has two names. And he doesn't really understand why, which I think is cute. Moving on, we see him again, I think, because we can see his sort of like straight arms, which is his hallmark, marching towards the last tower. He says, to Isengard, with doom we come, with doom we come, with doom we come. And something you might notice when you are reading Lord of the Rings is there are a lot of songs. And for the Ents to roam again is very special because they have no lady trees and therefore no children. So they almost are becoming extinct. Even though there will still be trees, they themselves are a dying race. They do live for a very long time. And it could be that more trees will be awoken later, so two can be the ladies of them. How did they awake once, then is the question. Well, they were very old trees and the elves had been caring for them for a long time. And eventually they taught them how to speak. And that is how the Ents learned to speak and learned from the elves again later to walk as well. This was a very slow process and something that takes many centuries is impossible for humans to do. And it is still hard for any elf to do the same thing. But they still did, and the elves changed in all this time. They haven't been caring for the forest as much as they did before. Now they have found more appreciation after this moment, but it will still take some time and we haven't seen much of this. But here we see the Entish restoration, the fact that the Orthonk has been resurrected, restored, after the Ents have fought their battle here. And they had made sure that there would be water here at first, and then they had gotten this place to repopulate. This place was actually the only tower not destroyed by the Ents, and they have been granted this land around this tower, and well, they seem to have done a good job at repopulating it if we look at the art here. Aragorn was actually the person to give it to them. He promised Treebeard to bring prosperity to the Ents again. And Treebeard explained that without wives they wouldn't ever regain their prosperity, and asked Aragorn to take care of the forests instead. I think this is lovely that he chooses the forests over the living Ents that are so old right now. He feels maybe like the younger ones deserve a chance at the spotlight, or maybe the sunlight in the tree's case. Pippin and Merry were actually asked by Treebeard to look for the Entwives anyways. And it seems like they were very sure that they would find it. This gives Fangorn hope again, and in the end of the third book, it seems like Fangorn knows he himself will return in the future. But let's look at some things that the trees are good at. One thing is toughness. As you could see from before, Fangorn had 10 toughness. But what can we do with that? For example, solid footing would be able to give a creature, an enchanted creature that has vigilance, which they have with your commander out, assign their combat damage equal to their toughness rather than its power. So he becomes an 11-11. An elf, if you might, but okay, that's a bit too deep, I think. There are more Treefolk though, and many others do feel like they care about toughness as well. Like Doran, I feel like the only true commander of them because he has the three colors. Let's say this was a joke you should get. And he says each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. He's a 5/5 therefore, which is very powerful for 3 mana. 3 mana. I get it. Then there is the Ancient Lumber Knot, which does kind of the same. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So that's kind of stronger because power might still count. And then there is the Indomitable Ancients, 4 mana, which is just a 2/10, which I wanted to point out because they are so strong. And this kind of reminds me of Hobbit, the houses, the Shire. I mean, and here is one that sort of counts maybe, which gives your creatures vigilance again. So maybe that is a theme as well, now that I think about it. But it also says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has toughness 6 or greater, so again toughness, transform it into that thick 3/6 that gives everything vigilance. Mr. Revelation 2, I feel like this is one of the best payoffs, says scry 5, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you draw cards equal to its power, and you gain life equal to its toughness. So you gain a lot of life. But do we really care about life? We'll see later. We also have Tower Defense, which I think is a very strong one, which has creatures you control get +0, +5, and gain reach until end of turn. Reach is another things, multiple, that trees really like. They like to be tall, and they usually are. One funny thing that I found is that there are 2 Treefolk that have more power than toughness. One is a Rootless Jew, that doesn't have roots, so that is maybe why he has more power. It isn't rooted, it isn't a stay-at-home tree. And then there is the Toonville or maybe Townville Treefolk that says right now you are a feeble stick, but I will help you grow some rings. So it seems like whenever a tree goes out of their way to battle maybe, or to help fight or to train, they will get more power than toughness. But still these guys are rather thick. Let's look at some other lords. So we have the Battle Wand Oak, a 3 mana Treefolk that says whenever a force comes into play, it gets +2/+2. So that's one thing. Of course, it works with forests, which is fun because he is one, or part of one. And then whenever you play a Treefolk spell, you do the same. So basically, whenever a tree enters, he gets +2/+2. Then there is Timber Protector, which says other Treefolk get +1/+1. Not very strong. So we really see how we didn't have any lords before that are usable. But this one will still be, because it says other Treefolk you control are indestructible. So that's useful at least. Then there is another theme which is giving graveyard vibes. So here we have Golvanor, the last U, again the U thing. The 3 colors again. Vigilance again, Reach again, so those themes really do go along. And then whenever he or another creature you control dies, return up to 1 other target creature card with lesser toughness from your graveyard to your hand. So there's the toughness again. We really see that they have a clear identity with toughness, vigilance, reach, and now the graveyard theme. He also has an urn, which says whenever a creature with toughness 4 or greater is put into your graveyard from play, you may remove it from the game. At the end of turn, if 3 or more cards have been removed from the game with Golvanor's urn, sacrifice it. If you do, return those cards to play under their owner's control. And now that I read it again, I feel like it is stronger than I thought, because it says whenever a creature put into your graveyard from play you may remove from the game, and at the end of turn. Oh, so you can have more cards die, so you can like do a board wipe and get all of them back, which I think is fun. Because I thought it said you must sacrifice them, but no, it's at the end of your turn. So you can really see how the Treefolk like to get back, and they really don't like going down forever. Then there's Eudora, another Treefolk, which says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its own owner's control. It's just a forest land, which also is useful, especially with the mana that you can keep forever. Then there's this one which says target creature gets stronger for every creature card in your graveyard. And the Old Man Willow from the new set, which is the sort of the guy that the hobbits are afraid of at the start of the book, the first one I mean. He has power and toughness that are equal to the number of lands you control, and whenever he attacks, which he apparently can do even though it's just 3, or he can because he is like he uses the wind to attack, I think. But when you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and his vibe is that he puts people to sleep as well. Growing our legions, we can do that very well. So there are some ways in which to do that. So we have Assault Formation, a very good card for wall decks, but also for the Treefolk. Each creature again deals damage equal to its toughness, but then creatures you control can sort of fire breathe in that way. It does cost 3 mana, but that is a mana sink that we love in this deck. We have this guy who does kind of the same, but also if you have the initiative, double the toughness of each creature you control. So it's sort of like a double strike. Then there is the Sight of the Skill Lords from Tarkir again. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, creatures you control with toughness 4 or greater get +2/+2 and vigilance again. So those things really overlap, even though it's not a Treefolk card. Then we have Quick Beam from the Lord of the Rings set again. It says, when he or another Treefolk enters the battlefield under your control, up to 2 target creatures get +2/+2 and trample, which we need because we need some evasion. You can see his flavor as well. It is only a nickname, of course. They have called me that ever since I said yes to an Elder Ent before he had finished his question. So the Treefolk, what this really says is that they are really slow. They like to take their time and, finish their sentences. Then there's the U Spirit, the third U, I guess. A 5-mana guy that sort of doubles itself. And what I like about this is that this is again a mana sink that can get out of control really fast. Plus it's a Treefolk, I guess. Okay, gaining life. I've said this before, but this is also a Treefolk thing. Reach again, so that's one thing to point out. But this one says, creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. And that can get out of control really fast. So for one thing, you can gain 2 life, but there are so many ways in which you can easily go almost infinite with this. So, which I think is really fun. It's really coming together, this deck, I feel like. So we have Orchard Warden, which is a 6-mana guy. Whenever another Treefolk creature comes into play under your control, you may gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So 6 here, but maybe 10 with your commander, so that is a lot. And then if you have this guy out, which is of course a small combo on its own, things will be 5 to 10 mana less. We have the Loxodon Life Chanter, so we are getting out of Treefolk territory here, but will be fun as well with him. When he enters the battlefield, you may have your life total become the total toughness of creatures you control. So basically a very high number. And he gets +X, where X is your life total, which will also then be a high number. We have Angelic Chorus, which does give you life equal to the toughness of creatures that enter the battlefield. So again, that will be a big numbers again. Usually the life gain decks work with triggers, but we want effects that love big numbers of life gain. Then there's Trostani, which says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain toughness, life equal to its toughness. So there are a lot of those. And here we see another kind of payoff, which is when a creature dies, that is enchantment, you gain X life again and draw X cards, where X is the toughness. So drawing cards, we love that here as well because we have so much mana. Life gain again, but this time it just gives them sort of life gain. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So they do need to get in, but trample works as well. And then we have Arguel's Bloodfast. Of course, at first you need to get really low. You have to have 5 life or less, but then you can sacrifice creatures to gain life equal to their toughness. Before that, of course, you can pay 2 life every time to draw cards. So you love that as well. Then we have Eily, which does the same. You gain life equal to the creature's toughness. So there is an abundance of this effect in these colors. But of course, we do want to win still. So that will be the last 2 cards, which is for 1, Scour the Desert. Not really a winning the game card, but does create 1/1 white birds for every point of toughness from a creature that you exiled. So that will be, like I said, maybe 10 birds. So not really immediately winning you the game, but I thought this is a pretty strong card here. But one thing that did come into play is this one, which says sacrifice another creature, target opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. So that is one way that you can do it. We did see a lot of other trample stuff, so that is another way in which you can win, of course. And I hope you do. Thank you for watching.